Okay, hello everyone, and welcome Linda Rising.
Hey, it's great to be here, Josh. I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah. Sorry, it's not in person this time, but it's really a pleasure to have you here, and thanks so much for taking some time. I think you just got back from a epic bike trip.
Yeah, we take a bike trip every year, so it was just another trip. It's a great way to take a vacation and face lots of fear.
Yeah, what kind of fear did you face?
Well, we did the Virginia Creeper Trail, and it's half of it is on a mountain. So you climb and climb and climb and climb, and all the people who are being shuttled to the top, they're flying past you, and you hope, wow, I hope they stay over to one side because it's pretty narrow in some spots, and you're going so slowly because you're going up and up and up and up and up, and they're just flying down the mountain, and you just hope, I hope they see me. I hope,
Oh,
ah.
right, fear of getting hit.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. And on the
Mhm.
side of the mountain where, it would be very difficult for somebody to find you if you're right in the middle between a couple of stations. So, yes, but fear is can be okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think there's good fear.
There's good fear and bad fear. So say
Yeah,
more about that. What is good fear?
yeah. I think if you have good fear, then you're motivated. It's a little scary to climb that mountain, but I would not want to say, "Oh, I'm terrified of climbing that. I don't know whether I can make it to the top. I'm incredibly old. Every year our bike trips are more and more challenging, but by golly, I'm going to do it. And when I do it, because I was afraid, because I wasn't going to take that risk, I thought maybe this is not a good thing to do, but I did it anyway. That is so much more rewarding. I don't think I've ever taken a vacation where I didn't have some kind of challenge or fear or risk or something new or something different. That wouldn't life be boring and
Yes.
horrible and you wouldn't learn anything? So
Yes. Yes.
sometimes fear can be a driver, as long as it's not paralyzing and
Hmm.
horrible. So it's a good fear. Maybe we can have good fear and bad fear.
Yeah. I think the topic is it's basically so utterly important, and it's not the kind of thing that necessarily comes up in agile discussions. Like the definition of agile doesn't say anything about fear if you look in the
No,
dictionary, right? But we know that fear inhibits us, right? It slows us down.
yes. And in fact, any kind of change, the book Fearless Change, that's the title of the book that Mary Lynn and I wrote. And the title, interestingly enough, came from a friend of ours who said, pick the most important pattern and name your book after that.
Aha. Nice.
So
Yes.
then we thought the most important pattern was fearless.
Yes.
So there's a difference between fear less and fearless. So
Mm,
fearless means you have no fear, but fearless means okay, there is going to be fear. Maybe it's that good kind of fear, but you're not going to let it stop you from the change effort, from being agile, from whatever, climbing that mountain. You're going to fear less so that it won't stop you from doing all those great things that you want to do.
mhm. So, yeah, and I of course, I erred in not saying that, you're the author of multiple books, but the 2 that I'm most aware of course, are Fearless Change and More Fearless Change with Marilyn Manns, co-authored. And you are a internationally known, software consultant and speaker, and I guess, you've transcended just the software field because you've long been spending many years looking at human stuff, how the brain works and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah, and I guess for me, it was kind of a surprise. I didn't really expect to go in that direction. I was sort of hatched as a technical person. I have a PhD in computer science, and I have spent a lot of time doing technical things. And when Mary Lynn and I started writing that first book, Fearless Change, I thought it was going to be technical. I thought we would write about patterns. And patterns at the time meant design patterns,
Right.
technical patterns. And it took me a long time. Mary Lynn was way ahead of me there. She knew what was going to happen. It took me a long time to come around to say, no, no, it's not about how you do these things so we can have a process. No, it's about the people.
Yeah. So that
What?
must have been.
The people? I had to learn. And again, a lot of good fear there. I don't know anything about this. I'd had one psychology course. So I had to really do a lot of running in place to understand, well, how is it that you talk to people? How is it that you address the fact that they're terrified? How is it that you even realize that these other people are afraid?
Right.
I'd never really thought of that as a characteristic of software engineers. They never talk about their feelings. They certainly wouldn't talk about being afraid and afraid of a new idea,
Oh yeah.
afraid of changing something, a programming language, a development environment, afraid of letting that go. It wasn't until I saw that myself how fearful they were. It was eye-opening
Yeah.
for me
Yeah.
to realize that is the emotion they were feeling. They were afraid.
Right. Right. So incredibly important to understand this human side. If you're in the software field and you're not paying attention to your own fears, you're probably missing something.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many now good fear stories out there. And the best one that comes to mind is one that Google produced way back in 2012. There was a book called Work Rules that talked about Google's attempt to find out what is it that makes great teams. And so they thought, well, we're going to collect a lot of data and we're going to study all these teams. And so they collected the data and they thought it must have something to do with smart people all getting together and how they approach the problem. And they thought they did exactly what I did. They thought this is going to be a technical problem. And that's exactly what they measured. Lots of technical things. It must have to do with the IQ of the team leader, or who are these people getting together. And it was amazing for them to see there were no patterns. They couldn't figure it out. What is it that makes great teams? And it wasn't until they wandered off and they started looking at, ooh, culture, how people think, norms, cultural norms. And when they started really looking at all that, the thing that popped out, the thing that characterized all the great teams at Google was psychological safety. They were terrified. The thing that addressed their fear was the thing that made them great. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an amazing pivot to thinking about what does high performance look like, and
Yeah,
it's not a bunch of just deeply skilled individuals. There's much more to it than that.
yeah,
So yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I remember coming across that research too, and Laszlo Bach and The book is Work Rules, very, very interesting look at Google back in the day. Yeah, and I think, we talk about, one thing I always like to say is, like, companies have lots of pockets of excellence and lots of pockets of mediocrity or really poor performance. So I rarely would say Google is this, or,
No.
it's very hard to say. You really are making a mistake if you think the entire company is perfect and that they're there's plenty of pockets of problems in every single company. Yeah, these especially fear. Fear is, it's ever present. And it's why W. Edwards Deming basically said, he advocated that, he said the manager's job is to drive out fear.
Yeah.
Interesting statement, and it's the root of the mantra in Joy of Agility, drive out fear, right? That's where it comes from. And it also comes, of course, from these observations about fear. I think of you, as your book, Fearless Change, as part of a trilogy. I call it the Fearless Trilogy. And it's basically a book from the 1990s called Driving Fear Out of the Workplace, which is a book I absolutely love. It's where I learned about the cycle of mistrust and a bunch of other things. It's a fantastic book, written in the 1990s, called Driving Fear Out of the Workplace. Um, and then there's, of course, your book, Fearless Change, with Mary Lynn Manns. And then there's Amy Edmondson's The Fearless Organization. So when I look at those three books, I think, and of course, now you have more Fearless Change as well, but I look at those three books as like the trilogy. If you're interested in studying fear and fearlessness, especially in a business setting, those are the three books that I really recommend.
Yeah. And I think what was especially interesting about Amy Edmondson's book is that it has a fear story behind it, which is her discovery when she was looking at the error rates in two hospitals. She thought that the better teams would have fewer errors to report. That was going to be her evidence that these great teams in the hospital, well, they're the ones who do a better job. And when she first saw the data, it was reversed. Oh no, the good teams had more errors. And she was terrified. She has written about it. She's talked about it. She has a great TED talk about her fear because she was terrified. Oh no, all my research down the drain. What am I going to tell all these people? What am I going to tell my advisor? I'll probably have to drop out of graduate school. Oh no, I'll get a job at McDonald's. This is the end. I mean, her anxiety level went through the roof. It wasn't until she sort of realized, well, this could be good fear. Maybe I could use this. What can I learn from it? And sort of took a step back and said, well, what could this possibly mean? Why are the good teams, why are they making more errors? Really doesn't make any sense. And
Yeah.
that led her eventually to say, well, because they felt safe.
Yep.
And to identify this thing that she coined is brilliant, psychological safety. That was her baby, her creation. She called that you feel safe. So yeah, your team's probably going to report more errors because you think it's okay. You want to say, look, this was a mistake. We have a patient's life here in our hands. She was able to take that fear and use it. So her fear was the driver.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember reading about it, and she had to work with a brand new research. Once she pivoted, she had to,
Yep.
like, bring in someone who was not sullied by the prior research in the hospital, and
Yes.
so a brand new person didn't know anything about what happened before, and basically said, "Hey, go after this hypothesis." And that was the thing. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in a hospital setting, mistakes happen, of course, but you really want a culture of continuous improvement. And if you're, at what she discovered, as you said, was like the teams that she thought were going to be the least performing had the fewest These are people that don't interact well. They don't talk after. They're almost like strangers coming together as a
Yeah.
team versus the ones that have been working together for years and had, good relationships. And, she thought they'd be the best. Those other teams just had very few problems, and they were sweeping them under the carpet. Any problem, they just wouldn't report it out of fear. But think about it, in a hospital setting, that's just horrible. You're not actually looking at the problems to fix them and have an improvement culture, continuous improvement. That's really
Yeah.
bad in a hospital.
Yeah. And I think what was so compelling about that story was that she would share that she would say, I was wrong.
Right.
I thought I was going to be able to explain this. And here the data is telling me that my hypothesis was totally zero wrong, absolute. And now what? And that we've all been caught up in that. We've all been discouraged when things didn't go the way we thought they should. And we thought, my whole hypothesis is wrong here. What's going to happen to me now? That she was safe enough to share that with the whole world. I mean, she got up and gave a TED talk saying, I went through that. What we've all gone through was being afraid that we were so wrong. How are we ever going to get out of this? Things are not going well. It seems so hopeless.
Right. Yeah. It's an incredibly important thing. It's unfortunately, sometimes I feel like psychological safety, like anything that becomes valuable or that is valuable, starts to go down a sort of path where people start to
Yeah.
change the meaning of it, or sabotage it, or I've heard people say, we don't do psychological safety around here because it's all just too much positivity, and
Yeah.
nobody actually speaks their mind when there's a problem, and we can't stand that stuff. So that's not what Amy was talking about. Obviously, it's
Right.
not what you talk about in
Yeah.
Fearless Change. It's a abomination of sorts in terms of what this all stuff means, right? You're taking something precious, like let's say even agility, and then you're screwing it up so royally that it's nothing. It doesn't look anything like the original.
Yeah. I think it's hard to get it right.
Yeah.
And people are so anxious to get it right. And they're always looking for that silver bullet that we know doesn't exist. So when they see it, they think, oh, this must be the answer. And so therefore, we are really, really, really good. It's like taking vitamins. If 50 milligrams is good, well, then 100 milligrams, that should be even better, or 1,000 milligrams. I mean, even Linus Pauling, who won a Nobel Prize, did that for vitamin C, thinking, this is the way. I have found it. This is the answer. I can cure everything with just enough vitamin C. So sort of have that human tendency to latch onto something, and then we beat it to death. And we don't realize, well, what is this really all about? And what is the best way for us? And we are not Google. So maybe what Google found and what Google does, maybe that's not what we want to do. That we can't just clone some list of things and say, this is the magic. This is the magic way. You got to have some understanding of who you are and who your organization is and what your problems are. And a hospital is not the cockpit crew for an airline. What they fear are different things, and the way they handle and learn from those fears are different. So that's an important element that sometimes gets totally lost.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Paul O'Neill, and in my book, I talk quite a bit about him because he went into a 100-year-old company, Alcoa, the
Yeah.
aluminum company of America. And I first came across this story in Charles Duhigg's book, which
Yes.
was about the power of habit. That's the name of the book, The Power of Habit. And there's this incredible story in there about this Paul O'Neill, who goes into this 100-year-old company, Alcoa, where there was a lot of machismo there, in terms of, like, there were generations of Alcoans who would proudly show off certain scars they got, or working in the factories there, creating aluminum, uh, and they weren't doing well in 1986. So when he came in, he was the first external person to become CEO, and they were really struggling in the early 80s. I mean, just badly. They're really not doing well. He went in and he did some research before he took the job, and he quickly found out that he felt fear was the biggest problem in the organization, and that he went, started the job as CEO saying, I am going to make this the safest place to work, and safety is now the prerequisite. It's no longer, it's not even a priority, it's a prerequisite. And if you need money for it to make something safer, I'll get you the money, don't even worry about that. And he went in to create a true culture of safety, where it was so safe that even subcontractors, because I got a chance to interview him, which was incredible. And
Wow.
he told a story to me, which was that a journalist asked him, hey, Paul, is this Mr. O'Neill? This sounds like it's incredible stuff. He's like, is it really true what you did? Is it? He's like, don't trust me. Go to one of the aluminum plants and see for yourself. So this guy drives to one of the plants, and it's pouring rain that day, just downpour. And the guy gets out of his car in the parking lot and starts running to the building, right, to take cover. And in the middle of the parking lot, someone yells out, "Stop!" And he just comes to a complete stop. And this person comes up to him with an umbrella and says, "You're going to hurt yourself. It's raining and slippery. Here's an umbrella." Right now, that person was a subcontractor, wasn't even an employee, but
Yeah.
was so baked into the culture, this safety, and that's when the reporter knew, okay, this is real. I mean, this is not nonsense here. He really created this culture, and it even transcended him, because when he left, it continued. And I was blown away by the story. This was 2012 when I first read this. And that's when, for me, I started becoming maybe a safety geek, or just so interested in safety and its relationship to fear, that it was like a huge pivot for me in my career, thanks to Paul O'Neill, and I think that's, connected, of course, to all the work you've been doing with fearing less and focusing on those patterns. So let's get into the patterns a little more, because I love patterns, and I know we met in the patterns community back in the 90s. Um, and I think we still are both passionate patterns people. Um, what Can you just give an
Yeah.
overarching view of all the patterns in these two collections you've created with Mary Lynn?
Well, I guess I don't know whether I can cover everything, but when Mary Lynn and I started, she was being a sort of taking a sabbatical from her academic position. And so she was sort of coming at it from the academic standpoint, whereas I was working in industry, and we were both experimenting. And we said, we're trying to introduce design patterns into various organizations. And again, I thought it was going to be a technical problem. She realized that it wasn't. But we both thought there must be patterns for introducing patterns. That's how it started.
Mm,
And sure enough, we would get together every now and then and say, well, here's what I'm doing, and this seems to be working. What are you doing? Does that seem to be working? Do we know anybody else? We would have workshops at Uppsala. And sure enough, we did find that there were a little series, I guess, initially, of things that we were both doing that really did seem to be a pattern for solving a problem in a context, which
yes.
is the official definition of a pattern. And that it didn't necessarily make everything better. It would lead to a new context. And now we need a new solution for that problem in a new context. And so that's how you'd say we grew this pattern language step by step.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that in that realization, getting together with lots of other people, which is also a characteristic of patterns, it can't just be, well, I thought this was a great idea.
Mhm.
And Mary Lynn would say, wow, this really worked for me. It was, we have to find some evidence that lots of other people have also approached this particular problem in this context, in this way, before we can say, officially, this is a pattern. We want to have feedback from a lot of people, which you get in a writer's workshop by going to a patterns conference. So it wasn't as though we had an insight or that we realized, oh, this is our new model. It was piecemeal growth, step by step. Well, this seems to work. Does it seem to work for you? And getting feedback from a workshop. Well, it seems to work from them. And that's why it took us 10 years to formulate that pattern language
Hmm.
of patterns that are all connected, that all kind of follow each other, that lead you on. They're not going to solve all your problems, but step by step will lead you to introduce new ideas. And that was another big step. It wasn't just about introducing patterns, it was about introducing everything, any
Yeah.
new idea, any kind of change, including at one point we realized years into it that if you want to introduce change in yourself, those same patterns apply. That was kind of scary in a way. We thought, well, my, this is some kind of universal approach to problem solving. You don't even have to have anybody else who's involved. It's how you do anything, how you change your exercise habits or your diet habits or anything else that you want to change in your own personal life. These same patterns apply, and they are basically step by step. Try something, see if it works for you. And if not, you learn from it. And along the way, it's going to be fearful. And the most important pattern is fear less. So the fear less pattern is kind of a hinge pattern for a lot of them that says at some step, you're going to encounter either resistance from somebody else, resistance from yourself, reluctance on the part of the environment in some piece of it. And you're not going to want to deal with that. You're going to want to avoid it. You don't like it. You have fear of the consequences of that resistance. And the best thing to do is to say, it's okay. Learn from that. That's the essence of the fear less pattern. And that is a pattern I learn over and over and over, not only for introducing change into organizations, but introducing change in myself. When we had the pandemic, I had a neighbor who was 93. She didn't want to be vaccinated. And I thought, this is not a good thing. I should go out and talk to her. We're out walking in our neighborhood, and I said, oh, I hear you don't want to be vaccinated. I thought I should give her reasons. I should try to argue with her. I should try to convince her. And then something in me said, wait a minute. No. The fearless pattern says you don't have to do any of that. You just have to be willing to learn from this. So I just talked to her. Well, tell me, why are you afraid? You think maybe there hasn't been enough research, or? And then as we're walking and she's talking about it, and I'm just saying, oh, well, yeah, I can see how you would feel that way. Yeah, there is a lot of fear involved in this. And at some point, she said, you know, I think I will get vaccinated.
Interesting.
I thought, wait a minute, I didn't give you any reasons. Wait, I didn't argue with you. I didn't convince you that you should do this. That the important element in fear less is that, I don't know if this is a good way to say it, but you listen them into agreeing with you, or you
Hmm. Hmm.
listen them into seeing the benefits of whatever it is that you offer.
Hmm.
You don't have to. It's not about a sword fight or a duel where you list the points that you say are the benefits of this thing. No, they have to do that.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's you're making me think of a particular client we're hoping to win a gig with, and they're very attached to certain things
Of
that
course.
aren't serving them very well.
Yeah.
And rather than fight that, we've sort of embraced it and just asked questions about, well, how could we do it better?
Yeah.
They're not doing the thing that they think they're doing. They use these terms, and it's when we've assessed them, and they're not doing them really the way it's supposed to be. And we've just asked questions, and basically, yeah, I mean, it's what you're talking about. It's approaching it with curiosity. Sounds like, right?
Yes. Yes. Asking questions. And there's an element there that is really key, and that is you have to care. You have to really care about that person or that organization. If you're just kind of going, that's the thing I don't like about active listening or other techniques. It's not a technique. It's that you really care
Yeah,
about that person or about that organization.
right.
And so in
Huh.
almost all the stories I have about that, it's not what I said, or it's not exactly the way I approached it. It's that I went into it because I really cared about that person or that organization or that team or whatever it was. I really cared.
Yeah,
And that will lead you, that care, that concern, that will lead you to whatever it is that it will take for this person or this situation. And another story that comes to mind is political, because I have a lot of people in my organization that don't agree with me politically. We have a community here of about 1,000 homes, and most of them are pretty conservative, and I am not. And there were a couple of people in particular that I'd always run into in the gym before the pandemic. And I wanted to say something. I wanted to talk about things. I wanted to have reasons. I wanted to look at issues, and I couldn't think of anything. And it was only later I realized, you don't have to have issues. You have to talk about reasons. All you do is you run into these people in the gym, and they want to either tell you a joke that's inappropriate or say something to you, who knows, and you just say, and you're concerned for them, that you really care about these people, that you like them, they're your neighbors, will lead that interaction. And it's not going to be what you say. It's not going to be how you say it. It's that concern, so that at some point, that person that you disagree with is going to tell you, I know we don't agree politically, but I really appreciate that you are willing to listen to me.
yeah, yeah. That's beautiful. I want to highlight something that one of the members of the audience is saying here. What you're talking about, he's saying, is genuine human empathy and solidarity that bring us joy
Yes,
for all parts involved.
yes,
Um, Thank you, Henrique. Uh, yeah, that's active listening is something that is like a technique, and you're saying,
but
great, doesn't really work if you don't really actually care about the person. That's
yes.
incredibly important. Is there a So is there like in the book Fearless Change, are there kind of like your top 3 or 5 patterns that you use more than the others, or that are top of mind more often for you, or anything like that?
Well, there's the sort of the starting pattern is called evangelist. And when Mary Lynn and I were thinking of names for the patterns, we had several different candidates, and evangelist was a pattern that Mary Lynn really did not like. She said, I live in the South, and this has to do with religion, and I really don't like it. But I, on the other hand, was living in Phoenix and in a corporate environment, and we had corporate evangelists.
Right.
It was part of AT&T, Bell Labs, and it was not religious. It was something everybody used. And so we agreed to disagree and we kept the name. But after a while, as the pattern language sort of matured and grew, we realized how important that was and that it was religious. That when you begin, if you care about whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's the joy of agility or your political affiliation, or whether you desperately want your neighbor to be vaccinated, if you don't believe in it, if you at some level, and it has to be, it's faith. If you don't have faith in that, because most of the time we don't have an abundance of scientific evidence. I mean, sometimes we feel like we do, like vaccination, there should be science, but there has to be an element there of faith, of belief. So I just finished a book by Robin Dunbar, one of my favorite authors, and he's saying that one of the things that has characterized human culture and might have been the defining characteristic of human culture when we became a species of Homo whatever at some point was religion, that all cultures have it and is our solution for the big problems in life. So whether or not we subscribe to a particular religion or not, whether we're Christian or Muslim or Buddhist, or it's not that. It's that we are motivated by deep beliefs and our faith in whatever it is that we choose to carry along with us. It's my deep faith, my belief in humanity. It's my deep faith. It's my belief in my little orchestra that's coming over for rehearsal today at 3 o'clock. Are we going to be ready for our performance? Yes, we are. I know they will be ready. I have faith in them. And since they know I have faith in them, they'll be better.
Hmm.
They'll do it. You have faith in your children, faith in your community, faith in your country, faith in the giant collection around the globe, that there is something in us that keeps us going.
Hmm.
So, evangelist turns out to be key. You can't just lead change because somebody appointed you. You can't be the corporate evangelist and expect to have success. If you don't believe in it, everyone will know. We don't always know how we pick up on these things, but everyone will know you don't care. You're just doing this to get that promotion or that bonus. You don't really believe in it. So, evangelist is key. It's the first pattern. If you don't believe in it, if you don't have faith in it, if you don't think this is really going to make things better for your organization or your team, you might as well just move on.
Right. Excellent. We have about 5 minutes left, so I want to use the time wisely. First of all, I mean, it's incredible to know you and Mary Lynn spent 10 years, writing the book Fearless Change.
On each book took us 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about the cost of these books, like, you go to Amazon and it's like, okay, it's 30 or $40. I mean, and the amount of effort that went into it, it's crazy. It's a
Yeah.
crazy, return. Like what you're getting for that fee is so much wisdom that it's just wild that more people don't like. I think, to me, I worry that there's not enough studying or scholarship of, these wonderful books like yours. And it troubles me a little bit that we don't have enough of a book club study group type of environment going on enough these days. That does that, you see that much?
Yeah, I think it's a problem because people don't have enough time. And when I take a little survey before a talk saying, well, how many of you out there read real books? It's almost nobody. They do read books, but what they mean by that is these are audiobooks.
Right.
Now, there's nothing wrong with an audiobook, but if you're doing the audiobook while you're doing something else, like while you're exercising or while you're driving to and from work or whatever, then you're not really focused on it. And what we know about, thanks to the late, great Daniel Kahneman, if we wanted to talk about wonderful books, Thinking Fast and Slow, he's saying your conscious attention, your system two, if you will, cannot multitask. You can only do one thing at a time. So if you're focused on driving or thinking about running down the road or riding your bicycle or whatever it is, or cooking dinner, you can't also at the same time focus on anything that might be coming through from an audio book. So it's not to say it's worthless, and it may be better than nothing, but it's not the kind of attention that you really need. And that requires, I think, a real book and time. And boy, we're so short of that time for attention. I think that's a problem. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we're rushing around all the time, and we could actually be much happier, more happy, and efficient and effective if we study the world's wisdom and apply that wisdom, right? Because so many great minds have already kind of paved these incredible pathways for us, and it's a shame for it to just sit there and go to waste.
Well, just your attention to Edwards Deming, the quote that otherwise people, they would say, who is that?
Right.
Who's Deming? What did he do? I mean, he's not even alive anymore, so why should we pay attention? He doesn't know what's going on. Yes, he did. He saw a lot. He wrote about it. It's still there. There's enormous amounts of wisdom that have been captured that, it's not just the latest and the greatest. And that's the other problem, is that when people want to know, well, what book should I read? Then they usually want the bestseller, the one at the top of the New York Times bestseller list, or when that's the book that does get some attention, when maybe it's a book that was published 50 years ago.
Yeah, like Slack. Tom
Like
DeMarco's
Slack,
book on Slack.
absolutely one of my favorite books. Absolutely, Slack. If your organization doesn't have Slack, it cannot change.
Yeah.
The end. Stop right there.
And it's an
And
old
I've
book.
seen it. I have seen it so many times. Intelligent people, caring people, people who wanted to do a good job, but they had no Slack. So
Right.
they couldn't breathe. They
Right.
had no room to maneuver, no space to learn anything new. It's a dilemma,
It
because
is.
it's not that they don't want to. They just can't. They just
Yeah.
don't have any, they have no room to take a deep breath or take some time out and to really think about how are we going to do this? Yes. Yeah.
Well, Linda, this has been really inspiring to me, and I'm hoping to the audience. And it's just been a pleasure talking to you. You're just an amazing individual, and it's just a pleasure to know you. And I'm going to personally spend more time looking into your books. I have Fearless Change. I don't have more Fearless Change. Got to go buy that. I'll do that today. Uh, but I really, and you have an app. There's a new app, right? There's a
Yes, there is. We have it both for iPhone and Android. So Fearless Change app, and it will allow you, because one of the comments we always get is how shall we organize these patterns
mm,
in our organization might not work for you. So the app is designed so that you can organize the patterns yourself.
fantastic. I'm going to check that out too. Well, I really appreciate you being here. Thanks to everyone who came along, and we'll be back next week. We're going to be looking at the final mantra in Joy of Agility, which is be readily resourceful. So
That's
I look
awesome.
forward to seeing you in a week. Thank you, Linda, and
All right.
hope to see you soon.
Take care of yourself, Josh.
Thank you. You too.